Welcome everybody to the weekly shir for the Zera Shimshon, and it's Chof Daled Sivan. It's Erev Shabbos Mevorchim Tammuz, and it's Parshat Shlach. So I got a short part here today, and I was here, but there's a big skula, unbelievable, and it's Yeshua's name change. So it says Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea ben Nun Yehoshua. Before the spies went out on their mission, Moshe bestowed his Talmid Yehoshua with a minor name change, explaining that this would help him stand firm against the Meraglim's plans. So it said the Gemara in Shlita 34b. Why was it that Moshe Rabbeinu only saw fit to give his Talmid Yehoshua such heavenly special assistance by changing his name and didn't provide spiritual help for the rest of the spies? How come Moshe was only concerned about his student's future? Was he not the father of all Klal Yisrael? The Arizal says that when the Meraglim left for Eretz Yisrael, Hashem loaned them the neshamas of the Shvatim to watch over them. Every spy was imbued with this neshama of his progenitor of his tribe. Thus it was that the spy from the tribe of Reuven was injected, so to speak, with the neshama of Reuven himself, and so on. The tribe of Levi did not send a representative from their tribe, since they would not be receiving a portion in the land. But they did have a spy on the group nonetheless, Yeshua bin Nun, from Shevet Ephraim, who received the neshama of Levi, thereby enabling the spy from the tribe of Manasseh to receive the neshama of Yosef. For this reason, Moshe Rabbeinu was most concerned about Yeshua, not because he was a Talmud of Moshe, but rather because he was using Levi's neshama. Were Yeshua to sin during his time in Eretz Yisrael, it would leave a blemish on Levi's soul, and on the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu as a descendant of Levi, and as the premier member of the Shevet. This turn of events meant that Moshe Rabbeinu had a vested interest in helping to ensure that Yehoshua ben Nun did not fail when faced with the challenge of the Meraglim, because failure on his Talmud's part would have affected Moshe Rabbeinu himself. So says the Zera Shimshon. Now the Segula reads this way. Dear Rabbi Yisrael, apparently this was a letter written to Rabbi Yisrael Zilberberg. I am the Rosh Yeshiva, an American yeshiva. I'll never forget the day Dovi Schreiber, a pseudonym, asked to see me. Dovi was a younger man in the yeshiva's kollel and had been married for 4 long years without children. We sat together and we began to cry as he explained that the doctors had recently concluded that from a medical standpoint it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for him and his wife to have a child. This was my Talmud, and mamish hurt me to see his pain. It would have hurt regardless, but when it's someone that you've known for years and have seen grow and develop into a genuine Dven Torah, the pain is even greater. I thought that for a while, and eventually said, listen, there's a very choshev segula that I've heard about, which has achieved results in many cases. What's that? asked my Talmud, intrigued. I told him about a sefer that I'd heard about. Zera Shimshon, whose Mechaber writes in the sefer's introduction that anyone who learns the sefer will be blessed with children like olive shoots around his table. Not bad. A good promise from a tzaddik. Do me a favor, I told him. Go get a hold of the sefer for me, and I will not only learn from it, but I will use it in my drushas as well, bli ner. Dovi was very excited to my proposal, ran out to get the Svarim store, but by mistake he bought the wrong sefer, which I actually saw this week on the Svarim shop. I was in a Manny's in the Sharim, and I saw that it had the Zera Breirach, which is a very similar name, right next to the Zera Shimshon. But say Zera, right? It starts with the same word. Anyway, so he bought the wrong sefer Breirach. Not that it's not a good sefer, but it's not the one with the segula. It took us a bit of time to figure out what was wrong, and he purchased the correct one sefer. So he got this straightened out. As soon as I had the sefer, I began using it in my shirim, but I also decided to take things a step further. Once a week, I began to record myself giving a short shir on the Zera Shimshon of that week's Sedra, which I had sent out to a group of people who had committed to listening to the shir when it arrived in the zechus of this younger man and his wife. So if anybody has people that they need a segula, so it should be for their segula. I don't know who they are, and everybody knows that they know people that need segulas, so it should be from their zechus if you listen to this shir. I specifically didn't send it to a lot of people, but every person on the list promised to listen to it when it arrived in their inbox. At the end of the shir, I always mention the names of the couple who were doing this for, so that everyone involved could daven for them in addition to the learning that we were doing. Time passed with me, recording the shir every week without fail, and I want to make something very clear here. Sending out weekly email with my shir is not simple. I can testify to that. I went back to my old phone now so that I make sure that the shir gets out there. Okay, the Zera Shimshon's Torah is complicated and complex, and that's another thing. I had to first understand it myself and then retell it in a way that everyone I was speaking to would understand it as well. I'd also add some of my own ideas and wrap things up in a beautiful way so that it became an eagerly anticipated once-a-week email. After I'd been doing this for a while, I decided to add names of 3 other couples who I was personally acquainted with who also needed a Yeshua if they were to have children. I would deliver a weekly shir, excuse me, and concluded the names of the 4 couples, one of whom I had already been married for 5 years without children. Within that year, every one of the 4 couples had children. Every one of the 4 couples, I read that twice, had children. Even though some of the couples had been told by their doctors there was no hope for them. Within the year, we celebrated a simcha with every one of the couples on the list. So when I'm suggesting that everybody get a list, and we will email those and we'll say those names and have it in mind, especially I know a man, I'm not going to say his name in public, but his first name is Chaim, and they haven't had children for probably 10 years they've been married. So it should be a skula, a sechus for him to have children. Well, a while later, younger man called wanting to know where he could purchase the sefer, and he then related the following anecdote. I'm extremely close to the famous mashgiach, Rav Dan Siegel, he began. Not long ago, I called the mashgiach to discuss a certain medical issue, and Rav Dan told me about the Rosh Yeshiva who gave a shir in the Zera Shimshon, and strongly suggested that I too begin learning Seder in the Sefer. I told the younger man where he could purchase the Sefer, and we ended the conversation with best wishes on both sides. Shortly after that conversation, I found myself davening Mariv at the Beis Yisrael Shul. Looking around the room, I noticed none other than Rav Dan Siegel. I realized that the mashgiach had been part of my minyan. As soon as the davening was over, I approached Rav Dan and told him about the phone call I received from the younger man, asking him if he had indeed recommended that the caller learn from the Sefer as a segula for all the kinds of Yeshuas. Yes, he replied, I strongly recommended learning Zera Shimshon. My friends, what can I say? I don't think you'll ever be able to find a better recommendation than Rav Dan Siegel. I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos, and have in mind that anybody you know that's having trouble with shidduchim or parnasa or children, Bez Hashem should be in mind, should say have their name. Privately you can say it. I don't want to make anything public. And they all should have a refuah shlema and a parnasa berevach and a gitten Shabbos. Kol tov, Zagebesh.